Hey everyone, I'm the Exalt Tai, and let's talk about the flight skills Pegasus Flight and Wyvern Flight. These are some pretty funky skills. I'm going to be discussing the pros and cons of using these skills, particular details to think about, and some example builds. Now then, let's start flying.
My path is clear.
Pegasus and Wyvern Flight have the same effects but with different conditions. For Pegasus Flight, at the start of combat, if the unit's speed is greater than or equal to the foe's speed -7, it will inflict a penalty on the foe's attack and defense during combat, equal to 50% of the difference between the res stats before combat. There is a maximum penalty of -7. For Wyvern Flight, it's the same thing except when comparing speed, your unit speed has to be greater than or equal to the foe's speed -10, and then it will inflict the penalty based on the difference in defense. I want to elaborate how funky these skills are. They touch upon every stat. It's important to know that you need the speed before you can affect the attack and defense. The speed condition is required first, and then it'll compare the defense and res stat for the penalty. It's a funny skill, and that's kind of the reason why I wanted to talk about it. I want to mention who can use these skills. First of all, if your unit is visibly riding a Pegasus, that doesn't mean they can't run Wyvern Flight and vice versa. Just in case, okay? Second, only flying units who are using swords, lances, and axes can use these skills. That means no tome units, staff, beasts, and dragons. Can you imagine Tabarin riding on some Pegasus when he quite literally has wings to fly on his own? Like, man, don't make the Pegasus carry you when you could be carrying me. What are the pros and cons of using the skill? First of all, it synergizes well with the Phantom Speed Seal. It's not the most used seal, but it's not all a bad thing, because speed comparisons are pretty rampant. Let me explain that while also touching upon what Phantom Speed Seal does. Let's say that we have Myma versus Shida. Now this Myma has 50 speed, and the reason why it's Myma with all these mergers and flowers is because this is my Myma from my barracks. Though now she's +7. Also, please give Myma a resplendent outfit. Anyways, Myma is facing Shida, who has 42 speed and is running Pegasus Flight. So the speed comparison for Flight will take it as Shida's 42 speed versus Myma's 50 speed -7 for a total of 43. So Shida does not fulfill the speed requirement and thus doesn't inflict a penalty on Myma. Myma, who has Spurn, which is a very common B skill that reduces damage based on speed differences, will be able to get her Spurn going and lower Shida's damage. I want to make it clear that Spurn's speed comparison is not the same as Flight's comparison. For Flight, it's Shida's 42 speed versus Myma's 43 speed. But for Spurn, it's Myma's 50 speed versus Shida's 42 speed. But then we give Shida the Phantom Speed Seal. At max level, Phantom Speed Seal will increase the unit's comparison speed by +10. So, when they battle, Shida's speed will be 42 +10 for 52 comparison speed versus Myma's 50 speed -7 for 43 comparison speed. So now, Shida will be able to use her flight penalty. Myma, on the other hand, will have her Spurn compare her 50 speed to Shida's 42 speed +10 for 52 comparison speed, and thus Spurn does not activate. So you see, a good counter to speed-based reduction skills is the Phantom Speed Seal. But there is a big issue. I'm sure you've noticed I kept saying comparison speed. That is because the speed boost that Phantom Speed Seal gives is for skill comparison. It does not change follow-up attacks, which is when you have 5 or more speed, so you can do another attack. Myma, at 50, still has more speed than Shida's 42, so Myma will be able to do a follow-up attack and still win this interaction. This is pretty unfortunate, and there's some math to this skill, which I know, many people are against. I feel like the only math that's fun is derivatives, but even then, that's kind of pushing it. Well, I guess anti-derivatives aren't bad either. Anyways, there are some replacements for the seal. You could use the speed +3 seal, but that's less than +10. You could use darting blow / dance, but those are phase locked, whereas Phantom Speed is multi-phase. And I know you could just give them A skills and C skills and bring Laszlo, my man, but this is just an example build. There's not a power creep replacement, which is kinda surprising for intelligence systems. To some people, it might be an overkill for the +10, but consider this. Fighting against a foe who's using Spurn or something, and they're speed stacking. You deal far less damage than desired because speed-based damage reduction skills are annoying, and it just gets worse when they have that unsatiable thirst to break this damn sound barrier. At that point, having the Phantom Speed Seal is not a bad option. Either it can stop their Spurn from activating, or it can lessen the speed difference so they can't reduce damage as much. And you know what? We take those. I'm sick of fighting Fallen Knight and Legendary Dimitri. It's funny the first time, not the 200th time. I still love you, Dimitri. Back to the pros. The -7 speed or the -10 speed comparison is huge. Now, I did just downplay it, but in most cases where it's down to the wire, this comparison boost is amazing. If it's like 50 speed versus 47 speed, this is very helpful. Please remember that you need the speed to start the skill. The speed difference has no bearing on how much the flight skill debuffs. When considering and building units to utilize the skill, speed is definitely a priority, but so should the defensive res. Speaking of debuffs, this skill does lower 2 stats, being attack and defense. Less attack means you take less damage, and less defense means you can deal more damage. That's pretty simple, and that's what we like to see. Sometimes critical thinking is not at all necessary. That was a joke, please learn how to read. It's also an in-combat debuff, which can't be negated by something like LoL. Speaking of LoL, flyers don't have access to strong in-combat debuff skills like LoL, so flight skills can make up for that. Now, I do have to talk about the cons. These flight skills require units with a certain stat line, speedy with either high defense or res. Units that don't have this stat line can't really use flight skills that well, which does limit the usefulness and options. Math matters, and this skill only debuffs by 50% of the difference in defense or res. Meaning, to get the maximum debuff of -7, it would need a difference of 14 defense or res before combat. Meaning skills like Breath, Brazen, Solo, etc., those skills won't boost the penalty. Skills like Fury and Fortress will though. Aside from that, the B skill slot has some serious competition like Chill, Link, Ruse if you're wealthy, Vantage, Desperation, the all-time flyer favorite Dive Bomb, Wings of Mercy for any of you mean people, and of course, Breaker skills. There's a lot of options for flyers, which can be more appealing since flight skills work best on units with a certain stat line. And then, these skills are currently only available on 2 different units. Here they are. Fiora has Pegasus Flight while Milady has Wyvern Flight. The pain of foddering Milady for Wyvern Flight hurts more because she has attack defense solo 4, which is very nice, and the instant lance is pretty solid for player phase defensive units. Fiora on the other hand is, well, I mean, Guard Lance has the guard effects, which is nice, and she has Fury 3. Yeah, I think it's fine to fodder Fiora, but Milady knots. That was not my best joke. Here are some things to consider. First of all, it has the same SP cost as skills like Chill, so scoring wise, it won't make much difference. Due to the stat line requirement, I recommend a unit with 35 speed or higher. Now, Milady does have 33 speed, which isn't the best, but it can work. As you know, you'll need a 14 defensive res difference to get the full penalty of -7. So let's say you have 40 defensive res. That means the foe must have 26 defensive res before combat. Units with low res like Brave Dimitri, Burger King, Shinon, they'll get hit by Pegasus Flight pretty hard. For Wyvern Flight, there's Young Shida, Brave Lyn, Air, Summer Byleth and Rhea, and then the recent Ninja Lyn and Florina, which everyone is going to get a free version of, so good luck! There will be some units who have higher defensive res than 26, like Brave Hector, in which case your options are Summoner Support, Dragonflowers, and Merges, etc. What's interesting is that the debuff penalties like Ploa and Chill and Smoke are still considered before combat. So with Pegasus Flight, you could pair that up with Res Ploy or Speed Ploy to boost up your flight skill. So, should you use flight skills? I would say yes. If you can find a unit that works with it and you can afford it, it's going to do great. Sure, the conditions are a little finicky, but they're not at all difficult to achieve. The skill already gives a huge speed comparison of -7 or -10, and it can't be stopped by skills that neutralize penalties because it's an in-combat debuff. It's fairly simple to get a max penalty of -7 attack defense with support from allies with visible debuff skills. It's not unrealistically hard to use, and it's different from other B skills that flyers can use, so maybe you can catch someone off guard. Time to show off some example builds. I'm going to be starting with Wyvern Flight first. I will be cycling through their builds with Dragonflowers and Merges and Summoner support. We have the 5-star exclusive Lejarn and the more accessible Cormag and Tsubaki. Lejarn is a very good user of Wyvern Flight, having solid speed and defense. Her personal sword also steals some of the foe's bonuses, which can further her capabilities, and we love to see it. As mentioned before, Fury synergizes well with Flight since it can boost the defensive res before combat. Of course, there are different seals that can be used, but these are flat additions to your stats, which do help Wyvern Flight. Tsubaki is an interesting guy since he's one of the few Book 1 units that can use this skill well. It is a shame, but attack defense unity is a during combat skill, so it won't boost Wyvern Flight, but I think that's fine with its defense. Korvac is just a speedy boy, and he can swap around his refine and weapon for anything that suits what he needs. He might not need Wyvern Flight, but it can certainly help out his damage and survivability. Now for Pegasus Flights. Our 5-star exclusive is going to be Tsubasa from the top-selling, best game of all time, the Mona Lisa of JRPGs, Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore, now available for Nintendo Switch. Please play the game. Moving on from that, Tsubasa has a fun lance called the Mirage Feather. It grants her +6 attack and speed when she initiates combat, and she can make a follow-up attack before the foe can counterattack, if an ally has already acted. And that can work very well with Pegasus Flight, since your ally can be a dagger unit or use a smoke skill, maybe even panic, to lower the foe's stats. Then Tsubasa can swoop in and take the win. Our more accessible choices are Claire and Shida. I do want to mention their weapon refines. The same thing goes for Tsubaki, who has his special refine for his golden Naginata. It definitely depends on you and which refine you want, whether that's the special refine or a stat bonus. For Claire and Shida, they have the Flashing Blade refine, which isn't terrible, but I feel like stat bonuses might work better for them, especially when they want to get their fight skills going. Claire has a pretty simple player face offensive kit, while Shida has her wonderful disencounter. Both of them are running joint drive attack, but that's just more of me telling you that they are in need of attack power. If you don't have that skill, that's completely fine. I don't expect anyone to fodder male Chris for anything other than Spurn. But I can see people foddering Lilith. I mean, she only has attack speed bond and defense res link. That's not saying they're bad skills, but joint drive attack is just amazing. Now, just like Marth and I suppose Roger, I too believe in Shida supremacy. Thank you Intelligent Systems for giving her a splendid outfit. It does just give her +2 to each stat, but that's a very welcome +2 to every stat. If you look towards the right build, at full max, so that means Summoner Support, Max Dragonflowers, Max Merge, and Resplendent, she has an incredible stat line and has very favorable matchups against a lot of powerful foes. Since she's running this encounter without Vantage, she will be forced to take damage, which is where Pegasus Flight comes in. Then, when she retaliates, Winged Sword is super effective against calves and armors, Pegasus Flight decreases the foe's defense, joint drive attack bonus, and hopefully the attack speed solo bonus. That's a force to be reckoned with. This is excluding ally debuffs and ally support and any visible bonuses. Man, Katria wishes she could do this. Maybe then Marth would notice her. God, if I see one comment that's like, oh, Pegasus Flight, like Among Us, this video's a lost cause. Nothing against Among Us, but I really don't think our pattern-seeking brains were meant for this. Anyways, if you have thoughts on Pegasus Flight and Wyvern Flight, feel free to leave a comment down below. That's all from me though. Subscribe for more Fire Emblem Heroes content and check out my other stuff. I also talk a lot on Twitter at Exalt Tai, so yeah. With all that, stay hydrated folks, and stay safe.